course, that's how you know her.
Yeah.
So you must know his brother too, right?
All set?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stop it on my end.
Okay, thanks.
So what's our cap off for people? The next one, I guess the lady went around the whole neighborhood asking people to come here.
Huh?
So
Oh, somebody came around? Yeah, we're gonna,
my next hearing, the woman, the victim woman ended up going around to her whole neighborhood asking people to show up, which I didn't tell her. I told her there was Zoom for that.
so I'm just gonna tell, we'll let in a few, but I won't let in.
Okay.
So just let me know when you're ready to go. So you have somebody, Linda Van Hoff, I think is on your second one. But
Yeah.
you also have a Teresa Ferrara from Holly Circle.
Okay.
I'm assuming she's the first one, right?
Yeah.
She's on Zoom.
Okay. We're just missing a Donna Cook, but I guess that doesn't, I mean, a Donna King.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's two names on the same dog.
No.
Okay.
Different. Yeah, totally different.
Roscoe is the registration dog.
Well, I guess both of them, but Roscoe bit.
What kind of dog?
The lab mix.
Black.
Yep.
Male.
Yep.
Intact, you know.
No, not intact. Fixed. Neutered, whatever you want to call that.
About how old?
It should be on the. My thing. 11. I invite before I put the wrong date for vaccine, by the way.
The meeting size is kept at 15.
15. Okay.
So if we get more than that, we can have them leave their car and bring them in one at a time if maybe.
I mean, there really is only a few actually involved that.
So just call the witnesses you need, and if you don't need to take public input, I'm assuming that's up to the board whether or not they want to hear from the public.
How many people?
15 is the cap for any public hearing, so. In person. I mean, they
In
can,
person,
we
how
can
many
have,
are on?
there's only 2 online right now.
We're all set. All right, we'll call the hearing to order. The town of Tiverton has called this hearing because they have probable cause to believe a dog has behaved in a vicious manner. The incident we're talking about today involves a dog owned by Nicola Smith. Okay, that is alleged to have behaved in a vicious, terrorizing manner on September 11th of this year. Mrs. Smith, you're the owner of the dog in question. Okay. And Mr. Blaze, you're the victim in this case. Okay. We're here under the Vicious Dog Law, Title 4, Chapter 13.1 of the Rhode Island General Laws, and today's hearing falls under the open meeting law. The panel is made up of 3 people: the chief of police from the town that is called the hearing, or a person that he or she appoints, an agent from the Rhode Island SPCA, and 1 person that the town and the Rhode Island SPCA both agree upon. I'm now going to read you portions of the Vicious Dog Law. Under the law, a vicious dog is defined as any dog that, when unprovoked, in a vicious or terrorizing manner, approaches any person in apparent attitude of attack upon the streets, sidewalks, or any public grounds or places. Any dog with a known propensity, tendency, or disposition to attack unprovoked, to cause injury, or to otherwise endanger the safety of human beings or domestic animals. Any dog that bites, inflicts injury, assaults, or otherwise attacks a human being or domestic animal without provocation on public or private property. We begin by hearing testimony from the victim or any witnesses on their behalf. When the victim and witnesses are done presenting evidence and testimony, the owner of the alleged vicious dog may speak and present any witnesses or evidence. The panel members may ask questions at any time during the hearing, and all answers to the questions will be directed to the panel. The only evidence that the panel will hear and consider is evidence that relates directly to the incident in question, or any evidence supported by previously documented police reports. Evidence that is admissible is something that you know happened, you saw happen, or you have direct knowledge of. Hearsay is not admissible. Hearsay can be described as what someone told you happened, or a written statement from someone who is not here today. Witnesses are not sworn but expected to tell the truth. After the testimony portion is closed, the panel will go into deliberations. Under the open meeting law, everyone is welcome to stay and observe. However, no more testimony will be allowed at that time. After we have finished deliberations, the matter will be put to a vote, with each panel member having 1 vote in the majority rules. The legal standard for making the decision to deem a dog vicious or not is based on civil standards and is known as preponderance of the evidence. What this means is that the evidence presented is sufficient to determine that the claim is more likely true than not. Mrs. Smith, as the owner of the dog, if the dog is deemed vicious, you have 5 days to file an appeal in district court. If the dog is found vicious, the panel will then vote on imposing any or all of the following requirements: that the owner obtain insurance of at least $100,000, that the dog be tattooed or microchipped, the owner place warning signs on his or her property, the dog can be secured in up to a 6-sided enclosure, the owner must notify the police if the dog is loose, if the dog is off of the owner's property, must be leashed and or muzzled, the dog is outside on the owner's property, any combination of the following may be imposed: leash, muzzle, tie out, or enclosed area. The dog must be spayed or neutered. If the owner moves, must notify both cities and or towns of the move, and cannot give away or sell the dog. The town will give you up to 30 days to meet these requirements. You will be provided with written notification detailing the requirements and exactly how long you have to meet them. If the requirements are not met and the time allowed, the animal may be euthanized. Are there any questions? Mr. Blaze, you want to tell us what happened on September 11th?
All right. I've lived on Holly Circle for 42 years. And recently, July, I'm 70 years old, and I had a couple of stents put in, so I'm trying to get exercise. So I went for a walk, it was late afternoon on September 11th, and I walked around the circle once. I came by, I seen Vicky had just gotten home. And I seen the white SUV pulling driveway, waved. Came around the second time, and as soon as I got, I was on the opposite side of the street. As soon as I got in front of the house, a black dog, Roscoe, I think his name is, came shooting out and barking and backing, barking, growling, trying to ignore him. I just kept walking, tried to ignore him. Boom, out of the back of the leg. I turned around and faced him. And then he stopped. Right? He was there, 3 feet in front of me, growling, showing his teeth, barking at me. Thought maybe somebody would come out and get their dog, but nobody came. But another neighbor, Claudette Jackson, come out on that porch, yelled at the dog. She knew the dog. Roscoe came home, yelled at him a few times. Finally, he stopped and he started walking away. So I went home. I didn't realize I was bleeding until I got home. I seen her bleeding on the back of my leg. So I called the police department, and rescue came, they treated me. And they recommended that I call my doctor. So I called my doctor. Ended up with a tetanus shot, antibiotics, stents. And then 2 Sundays following Sunday and the Sunday after, my wife seen the dogs on the street. They were loose on the street, and they ran up and got them, but still they're loose on the street. Sure. And I've had previous incidents with that same black dog. A few years back, it was in my own yard, barking around. So Mickey came and got it.
Okay. So you're familiar with the dog?
Kids and that dog.
Sir, I just addressed the so you're familiar with the dog?
Right.
Okay. And you're confident that it's Mrs. Smith's dog?
Oh, absolutely. It came right from that guy.
The person that yelled for him to go home, she's clearly familiar with the dog.
Oh, yeah.
Does she live across from Mrs. Smith?
One house down.
Okay.
Up the street.
Right next door.
Next door, okay. And is that you, ma'am, or? that-
No.
Yeah,
No,
No,
okay.
I'm on, no,
Okay.
outside.
Okay. All right.
Do they have one dog or 2 dogs?
I have 2 dogs.
2 dogs?
I have a black lab mix and a rescue Rhodesian.
it was the black one that came out.
Just one came out of the yard? Okay. Is that the one that usually comes out of the yard?
Normally I've walked that street before, and most of the time I don't have a problem. It just happened that day.
So there, Mrs. Scudo over here is the other previous incidents, had incidents with both dogs.
Okay.
That 2 reports in there.
Okay. Great. All right, Mrs. Smith, were you there to witness the incident?
No, I was not.
Okay. It appears that your dogs, I guess, have been out several times in the past and maybe have been involved in at least one previous bite?
No, they've never bitten anybody. I've never been aware of them attacking anybody. There's been no bites on their records. There's not.
Okay,
They're family dogs. They've been around farm animals, children. And on this particular day, they did have gotten out in the past. I've taken a lot of precautions to make sure that that doesn't happen again. I
Okay.
just spent $2,000 on replacing both my doors and adding additional latches because the Rhodesian is very intelligent. She knows how to open the doors. So now we have 3 different lock systems on the door. There was an incident before that my teenage son had left the front door unlocked and they had pushed through. But on this particular day, the 9/11 incident, I was not home all day. I left at 10 a.m. with my dog. I was in Warwick. I had picked up my nephew on a flight at 1:49 from American Airlines. I then proceeded down to Middletown and was there till 10 o'clock at night. I had gone into my office with my dogs and then went to my sister's house. And I was there with a family dinner till 10 o'clock at night with my dogs. So I don't understand truthfully on the 9/11 incident. They did get out on 9/8.
And that's the Mrs.
And that one I was not home for. Again, that was the one that my teenage son, I was at Market Basket, I received a call, saying the dogs were loose from a neighbor. And when I arrived into the neighborhood, I immediately left the Market Basket, didn't check out, I had my daughter with me. I returned home immediately secured them. The officer said that they had been out and brought them in home. Ross with a black lab had been maced by one of the neighbors, but I was unaware of that. So my daughter went to grab him and put him in the car, and then of course she was in contact with me. That was the only incident that I'm aware of. Gary, I don't know if it was Roscoe or not, but we were not home that day.
I see you driving the driveway.
That's what I'm confused too, because in fact, I'll show you too, that my sister has the same exact car as I do. We have white GMC Acadia 2012. She has a pink breast care awareness.
So is it possible that somebody else was at your house and let the dogs out?
Yes, and my teenage son has friends coming and going. I have a white GMC Acadia with a blue M on the back.
Okay, so it is possible that somebody else went in your house, a family member, a friend, and that's how the dog got out.
The dogs were with me all day long on that particular day because of the 9/8 incident. I was starting to bring them to work.
You were what?
I had been bringing them to work with me and taking them out with me as much as possible. So on the 9/11 incident, I was not even at the house. Nor with the dogs.
Are you familiar with any other similar looking dogs in the neighborhood?
So
No,
maybe the
I
same
have
person,
a witness
I'm
statement
just saying
from,
on that particular day, I don't, we would definitely be safe.
The day should not matter.
Well,
Hold the call one
I
second.
can attest to that Mace
Hold
situation.
on one second.
Thank you. I understand. I understand.
And I've taken the last precautions, like I said, they now have, the canine vests too, because I've researched into how she's getting out of her collar, the other one. They always travel together too, so that's why on that particular day, they don't leave each other's side. When they do get out, I've also, gotten 3 new leads, fixed the doors.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Mrs. Smith. I'm looking at a printout from the police department with you having 15 previous incidents involving your dogs getting out of the driveway or off of your property. And at least one other previously, at least alleged animal bite on 3/18/18.
I've never heard anything about that.
Okay.
So,
So
like I said, they do get out. and they don't-
understand what I'm saying is that, Mr. Blaze is saying that it was your dog. An owner or apparently a neighbor identified it as your dog, which is annotated in the police report. And you have 15 previous incidents where the dog has escaped your property. So I apologize, but I have a hard time believing that it wasn't your dog that escaped the property.
Like I said,
and didn't miss the
I have
place.
escaped before, I just, this particular date, I wasn't even there the entire day. That's why, and actually she had called, animal control officer had called me around, I believe it was like 2:30 to 3 o'clock, and she said, "Are you home?" And I said, "No, I'm not," and then Middletown. If you remember the phone call. So I really don't see how, if you do the timeline,
I can't tell from the phone call.
On 9/12, so the day after the incident, a witness statement was provided to police by one of your neighbors identifying this as your dog, that they observed exiting your yard and running up and biting Mr. Blaze. They identify it as a black dog coming out of 122 Holly Circle. That's your address?
like I said, I apologize, sorry if there was something that, you know, again, why did the date was wrong, but he's never shown
I
any.
am absolutely positive it's your fault. I have no doubt whatsoever. No doubt whatsoever. I know that. That dog's gonna have to leave my home.
You spoke with Mrs. Smith the next day, it appears.
Mhm.
Okay, she did say that, yeah.
No, I just think the multiple witnesses, you know, I live in the neighborhood and you know which dogs are your neighbor's dogs.
Yeah. Greg, any- Okay, ma'am, did you have something else? that
Sure.
You wanted to, if you don't mind just identifying yourself?
My name's Elizabeth Kudo. I live at 250 Holly Circle. I have a daughter who's 11, who has a best friend who lives right next door to Nikki, the Gabriels. So my girls walk back and forth, so we're walking around the neighborhood all the time. Back in March is when the first attack came where the brown dog Delilah came off the porch and attacked us while we were walking by with our dog. After the second attack, which was, you know, a short time later, my husband and myself drove over to Nikki's house, knocked on her door and said, your dog has attacked us twice. You know, you need to get a fence, you have to be responsible, you need to get, you know, electric fence, whatever it is, you know, we're very responsible owners of ours. She acknowledged that it's a rescue gone bad and said she'd do something about it. So then we go into the summertime and, you know, there was multiple times that the brown dog was separate from the black dog. So the fact that she said that they are never separated is not true because the brown dog was coming after us all the time. The black dog wasn't. So on June 24th, my daughter and her friend Vivian were playing over at Vivian's house and the brown dog was loose in the opposite yard. The little girl's name is Emily. They weren't outside, but the brown dog came out from behind a tree and growled and aggressively went after the two girls. They ran, they screamed and ran, and the dog ran. So I filed a police report on that day. I think it was June 24th. And then September 8th, I was walking Vivian home with my daughter. We came down the street, we were on the opposite side of the street. I had my dog. Nobody was home at her house. Her storm door was open, but the inside door was, the storm door was closed, the inside door was open. So I could hear the dogs barking from upstairs and it's a cape and I can see the inside stairwell. They both came barreling down the stairwell, blew out the storm door and went after the girls. Vivian threw her Italian ice at the dog, Delilah. Delilah then turned on my dog and was snapping and trying to bite my dog. I took out my Halt, which I carry on my leash now because of this dog, because I don't have any protection. And I sprayed both dogs. I yelled for my daughter and her friend to run. The dogs retreated. Roscoe stayed and didn't come back at me. Delilah came back at me and I sprayed it again. And I ran to Vivian's house and called my husband and called the police. So she is aware of these attacks. That is false because she acknowledged it. She had to get called by the police, who then actually the dogs.
The last two reports in that fact are her report.
When the police came, he talked to us, then he drove up to the house. The dogs went after him in the car. Then another man from up at the top street was coming down walking his little dog. And the two dogs went running after him and the cop had to get out of his car. And he actually had to protect the man and his dog who scooped up because it was little enough to scoop up. And I believe the cop even had to kick the brown dog. So then they called her to come back and get the dogs. So she's totally aware. And we asked her as cordial neighbors, you know, something's gonna happen. you need to get, be a responsible owner. And she acknowledged the rescue gone bad, which I don't fault the dog, but she, gotta be doing something.
What was that?
Sorry,
Being
they're not
responsible.
I'm not sure what
You
the.
did. In my turn, I don't want you to address me.
No, that's just our ordinance for the aggressive
You
dog,
did use that term.
not for aggressive dog.
No, for loose.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she paid multiple amounts of money.
So, Mrs. Smith, you say you weren't aware of these incidents in the past?
On the 9/8 incident, yes, I was aware, that's the day that I said I was at Market Basket, it came back, I would email, not under any knowledge that she has attacked anybody, gone after anybody. I had received a call that my dogs were loose in the neighborhood. Again, my daughter and I immediately left, we came home, my daughter and I secured them into the car, there was an officer there. The little white dog, that is Pumpkin,
That's not, I'm not talking about a white dog. I'm talking about.
Okay,
and they play together in the yard every day. He walks both those dogs and they come in and I don't see the issue with that one. Like I said, they did get out that day and yes, they did charge through the storm door, which now they've had replaced with 3 different locks.
When was that done?
When it was replaced. During the 3-day quarantine that they had put on, so.
Because I see at least 8 incidents that you were cited for by animal control. I guess my question to you would be, how many do you need to realize that there's an issue with the dogs getting out?
And that's why I've made changes to the house. I've also been, locked up a firm with my 2 children and their friends coming in and out of the house. With all of our doors closed, all of our windows closed.
Could I add something about the Mason incident where she said that she has no idea about, she never knew until her child told her? Okay, shortly after that March incident, I was walking my dog through the neighborhood, coming down Holly Circle. Dogs came out, barking, doing the usual thing. I blasted that dog with a postal spray right in the face. She heard the dogs, she was in the house. She came out the door, because I was by the tree line, so she couldn't see me. I was on the Gabriel side of the street, and she called the dogs' names, and I said, you may want to wash their face, because I just blasted them with pepper spray, and her response was, okay, thank you. So, for her to say that she's not aware of this pepper spray issue is, I'm sorry, it's a lie.
I don't see the point in lying. I think that we just need to
We're trying to keep the
problem
neighborhood safe here, and we have no issues with her as a person.
solved. No, not at all.
It boggles my mind how she's not grasping the situation where we have kids, because if something is to happen to my child or one of the neighbors, something's gonna happen. And.
He's already
but,
gotten
You
bit.
know, exactly. It is, an electric fence costs almost nothing for the peace of mind, and it's not harmful to the dog, but for some reason, she's talking about fixing doors. Where's the proof of that? We have no paperwork showing that she actually did anything with that.
We have a
You know, it's
method
like,
to address this.
enough's
We're
enough,
gonna-
because this is.
I'll be honest with you,
that's a
Mrs. Smith,
situation.
I'm a little surprised that somebody hasn't shot this dog yet, to be quite honest with you. We had an incident in the state just last year where police shot a dog that had been out about this number of times. So I'm a little surprised that hasn't happened yet, to be quite honest with you. Where did this dog come from?
Which dog are you?
The black lab, Roscoe.
So he's from Sable Lab.
Sable Lab.
And he's 8 years old.
Okay. How long have you had him?
When I used to work for rescue failure, it means that he was a rescue. My sister fosters dogs, so we're very aware of how to, raise them, maintain them, and train them. We ended up fostering her, and that's why we named her foster failure. We fell in love with her. She stayed. She's a great family dog. She's the sweetest thing. She's been raised with 3 children, my two nieces. She's been around other animals, other dogs.
How long have you had her? And, I'm sorry, him.
Roscoe, 8 years. Delilah, I think she's 6 now. And both of them, Delilah was the foster for my sister, and Roscoe, the black lab, is from Sable Lab. That's what I mean by foster failure.
I understand.
And they also seem to have a pack mentality, the 2 of them.
Yeah.
That they come,
Not
exactly,
always,
so.
but we've been attacked by Delilah without Roscoe. many times. Delilah has come after us more than Roscoe
Those,
has.
those are the types of
Okay.
dogs that takes a kid to trip, fall over, and those dogs are on top of those kids.
Well, they went after the kids when they weren't
Well,
even
that's what I'm
bothering
saying,
them.
I understand that,
Right.
but that's
That's the
exactly what.
No.
All right, we don't have any more questions. We're gonna discuss it and,
Do you want to take anything from the person who's on Zoom?
if it's directly related
Do you have
to,
somebody from Holly Circle? It's
What's the name?
Ferrera?
Ferrera?
Yeah.
only if it's directly related to the
Okay.
9/11 incident.
No.
There was a witness that said he was on Zoom. That witness, your
That was, I have his written
You
one
do?
too.
Okay. He said he was gonna be on Zoom and stuff.
Teresa Ferrera,
Yes,
do you have anything to add to the Holly Circle incident directly related to it?
not directly related to it. I do know that the ambulance was there. I saw the bite in his leg. I did not see the incident happen. However, I have also had incidences walking by with my dog, with the red dog, Delilah, coming after mine. I have to stand my ground, hide my dog behind me, and eventually she will go away. But if it's both of them, I'm
Yeah.
outnumbered.
I understand there's been, multiple incidents, but we're limited to what is documented in police reports today.
Okay.
Right. I understand.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we'll discuss it.
Yeah.
You can go in my office if you want.
For Mrs. Smith, we've documented that your dog's been out multiple times. I'm just curious as to your knowledge how they're getting out.
Getting it with the doors. I do have two young children that with their friends are over every day after school, in and out of the doors. The black lab is pretty sneaky. He likes to escape through the doors. So they do push, they work together as a team and they push through the levers on the door. I now have 3 locks, one up top, one on the base so they can't push out either way, and then the middle lock. I replaced both front door and back door with Larson doors. Again, that was $2,000. They've always gone from the door on a leash to their lead outside. And since this incident.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Okay.
Excuse me for 1 minute, please. Since the 9/8 incident, it's been, I've actually had my son standing outside, like in the morning when they're doing their things. I make sure that both of us are present. It's from the car, if we're taking them in the car, I make sure that they're clasped on their leash to the door. Delilah, which is the Rhodesian, she does have a habit of getting out of her collar. So now like we've gotten the harnesses for them, and I sat and watched her the other day wiggle out of that. So looking at different options for that. If I have to get an electric fence, I will. These signs are up. I did put a sign up and then replace the doors. I don't know what else to do with the
Signs mean nothing if the dog runs off the property. Signs
And
mean
since
nothing.
it's listed, and since I've made those changes, you're not what he has now.
And numerous times, we've lived there for almost 4 years now in December. Numerous times I've walked around the neighborhood and seen her pull into the driveway or just open up her car doors, open up the kitchen side door and let the dogs run into the car unleashed. So that's a crock as well.
And I've
I'm
also
sorry.
lived there for 16 years. and
I understand, but I'm telling what
We're
I've seen
telling
for
the
the past
truth.
4 years.
Okay,
That's the difference. We're telling the truth.
all right, I don't have anything else. Okay. Okay, so my opinion is that it was definitely this dog that is identified me, Mr. Blaze, and numerous witnesses. The dog left the property on multiple occasions, but specifically on the occasion on September 11th. And, I don't doubt Mr. Blaze, his identification of the dog. So I think the dog, in my opinion, meets the requirement to be vicious. I think off of the property leash and muzzle. the property, I think. An enclosed area, put up a fence,
Yeah.
as, detailed in the statute. Until then, I'm okay with a tile, as long as it meets the requirements for statute. Or, leash if she's gonna bring it to the bathroom. My personal feeling on a muzzle, when a dog is in their own yard, get properly secured, is that I don't think it's safe for the
Other
dog.
animal, especially living in the woods.
Yep, I don't think it's safe for the dog. He is neutered. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Mrs. Smith, based on what we've heard, I think unanimously believe that it was your dog, without a doubt, that bit Mr. Blaze. And again, based on the number of previous incidents involving this dog, I think you absolutely have a responsibility to do something to secure this dog. So we have determined that the dog meets the qualification based on the statute to be deemed vicious. So with that said, and this only applies to Roscoe, you're required to obtain a vicious dog insurance of at least $100,000 to tattoo or microchip the dog. And if that's already done, you can just provide animal control with that information. You must place warning signs on your property. Specific requirement in the statute is that it says vicious dog or vicious dog maintained at the residence. It has to be visible from the street. Must notify the police immediately if the dog is loose. If the dog is off of your property, so if you take the dog off, it must be leashed and muzzled. If he's outside on your property, he has to be either tied out. Again, specific requirements in the statute, it has to be, have a tensile strength of 300 pounds, so the dog cannot get loose. Or if you're bringing him outside, must be leashed or in an enclosed area. So if those two options, you have the option of fencing in your yard. Again, specific requirements in the statute. The fence must be a minimum of 6 feet high and prevent entry of people into that part of the yard and escape of the dogs. So if they're diggers and they dig out, you have to make sure that doesn't happen. Must be neutered. Again, if that's done, just provide animal control with evidence of that. If you move at some point, so these requirements follow the life of the dog. So if you move out of Tiverton, you must notify Tiverton Animal Control that you're moving out, and whatever town or city you're moving to, that you're moving in with a dog that's been deemed vicious. And you cannot give away or sell the dog. Should you violate any of these, the first offense, so if the dog gets out, the first offense is $500 fine, $550 fine. Subsequent offenses are $1,000. So if your dog gets out twice, it's a $1,500 fine. If the dog gets out in violation of these requirements, if the dog gets out and bites either a person or another animal, the dog will be euthanized on a subsequent hearing. Okay? So I want you to understand the seriousness of this. You have a responsibility by law to confine your animals. This dog has been out no less than 15 times. That's a problem. You have any questions? Sir? Okay. Ken, if you just want to.
So that's, the other instance I have Donna King. but-
Okay, that's for the second one?
No, that wasn't for this one.
Okay.
I am so sorry. We had 11 o'clock on the paper.
Okay, that's all right, ma'am. So I'm sure you just heard the end of this.
I really want, I have a picture of a dog bite for years. We have had trouble. We have an electric fence. And they are the best thing to keep your dog in.
When it gets to, so when it gets to the point where there's a vicious dog hearing, when the dog is deemed vicious, based on, testimony that we've heard, there's specific requirements in the statute for securing your animal. An electric fence doesn't meet that requirement. So
No, I'm saying my dogs, but
Yep.
they come to the line and attack.
no, I understand. I
My
think
dogs,
we've
they've
taken,
bitten them.
I think we've taken all the steps that we can take to ensure that this doesn't happen again. I will say that I've done hundreds of these hearings, and the requirements, once in place and once followed by the owner, they're advised to do. In all of those hearings, I've only had one dog that's, ever had a second incident. So the steps will work. Animal control will follow up and ensure that they're done to meet the requirements in the statute. So hopefully there's no more incidents.
So you will make sure that a fence is erected and all that.
So
stuff.
that's an option. So she can fence in the backyard where to meet the specific requirements in the statute. Or she can tie the dog out in the backyard. So again, it's gonna, be on a cable or chain that's not gonna break. They have to be secured to something.
I got you with the tensor strength and everything like that, I understand that,
Yes.
but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, with everyone up there. She's admitted she's got teenagers at home, I'm doing what they're supposed to be doing, and she hasn't shown any ounce of responsibility with this issue, so I find it a good chance that something else is gonna happen, so.
And that may be the case. We're limited statutorily what we're able to do.
Okay.
And as I explained, any violations of the findings of this hearing carry pretty hefty penalties. If the dog escapes and, bites a person or an animal in violation of that, after being deemed vicious, then the dog can be euthanized. And we, of course, hope that it never gets to that.
Absolutely, it's usually not the animal's fault.
I agree.
Human error, it is what it
The
is.
dogs go from the house to chained up, and then from chained up to the house, and the kids do it, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And,
And understand that all other, applicable state law applies here. You can't leave the dog out 24 hours on the chain. There's specific requirements for that, et cetera.
No.
No, I just want to,
I'm not-
She does treat her animals well, there's no question
no,
about that.
I don't doubt that
The problem
she cares
is-
about the animals.
That's the
I-
thing, the
I
problem
just-
is, it's everyone else in the neighborhood.
I
You gotta
understand.
stay safe, and it is what it is, you can't control your dog running off the property, that's a problem.
Yeah, I understand, and unfortunately, it has to come to this.
They're
sometimes.
they're
What about
both
the brown
vicious.
dog?
Yeah, I know we're
Right, yes,
addressing
you're
the-
addressing
the
the black
brown dog
dog, but
has
the
got an
brown
issue
dog
as
has
well.
come after us 6 times.
Well, again,
And
as I read in the beginning, all we're allowed to hear is incidents that have previously been documented by the police.
But
the
mine is
specific
regarding the brown dog.
Yep, the
Or is it
specific
regarding the
incident
dog?
today where the dog, bit, it was identified as being this particular dog. So we can't deem them both
So
vicious
the only
based on
reason the Delilah didn't bite is because I had the pepper spray.
and I would suggest that you continue to carry
Yeah,
that.
Okay.
I
Alright,
put it
that's-
on my daughter's bike, everything. I can't even let her bike
Yep,
around the neighborhood.
and I think, it's well within your right legally to take whatever steps that you need to take to prevent yourself or, your dog from being injured by another dog.
So I'm sorry, I missed. So it's just the black dog that's
Yes,
really,
It's the brown one that's.
it's the brown one as well. So
well,
we
again,
as the neighborhood have to,
We've had more issues with the brown one than.
Right,
the black
I was
one.
surprised when
coming
he said
right
it's
off
the
of
black
the
one.
property and
Well,
Because
if
the black
those
one
have-
seems to be a follower.
attacking.
if that happens, then I would encourage you to report it to the police. And,
Okay,
I've been reporting.
if we need to, revisit this issue with the other dog, we certainly will.
Okay.
But the incident that we were here for today
Was the
involved
bite.
only the black dog in the bite on Mr. Blaze.
Now, the people that are reporting in the neighborhood things on the brown dog, can they file police reports now, or is it too late?
You'd have to
Get a
talk to
vicious
animal
hearing on that?
control or the police, but I would say,
I take the same precautions for both dogs.
I
okay.
appreciate that.
That would be,
I appreciate
absolutely,
that.
that would be a help.
If I could say, Mrs. Smith, you have the neighbors here, right? And they all say you're a great lady, you have great
Right.
kids. So you don't want to lose your neighbors. So everybody can own a dog, but it takes a special person to be a good dog owner. And I say that all the time. So don't lose your neighbors.
Yeah.
Take the extra step to make sure your dog doesn't get out. That's the most important. If you can't have a dog, then don't have dogs. But
Yeah.
anybody can go to the pet store or anywhere and go get a dog. Just be a responsible dog owner. You'll save yourself a lot of headaches. If I can say that to you,
Yeah,
okay?
and the safety of your neighbors and their animals. I mean, they love their dogs just as much as you do, and they don't want anything to happen to them and their kids. Okay, thank you.
thank you
Thank you very
very
much.
much.
I'm just gonna go.
The next one's at 11.
And I apologize.
Restrooms right down the hallway and
What? 10 o'clock. I didn't know you guys were coming. I didn't know you were coming. I'm sorry you got it. You know, that's scary.
Next one's on Thursday.
Okay.
Is it?
You know, just see if there's any paperwork I need to.
Huh?
Or anything I need to.
Yeah.
She's gonna try and bring in the
I don't
entire.
know. They had the paper stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Which one?
I'm gonna go over too because it's been. Yeah, I didn't even know that.
I got it on too.
Did you? I would call them. I was just saying. I'm not putting her in class. Yeah.
Hi, Audrey. Hi, this is Patrolman McClure, Little Compton Police. How you doing?
Thanks for everything.
Good, good. I was just calling about an incident that might have happened at your place of employment this morning.
Oh, thank you.
What's that?
Yeah. I told him one
Okay,
day.
no problem.
So like dressed.
Hi,
Yeah.
I was just calling about an incident that happened at your employment this morning.
Well, condolences.
Depends what day it is, right?
But had our cans acting on it, like,
Okay,
When we're ready for him, he'll be there
okay,
to say what he knows.
okay.
So Linda's from, she's for this particular hearing.
Okay,
The other one left. So, and that's the guy that does the technology for me.
okay. So they said, their nephew was the one walking down for his testimony. He's gonna do it through Zoom.
Okay,
I don't know when they're gonna.
hang on, he might be here. Do we know his name? Archie?
Archie, yeah, that's their son.
He'll be on the same.
Okay,
Okay, perfect.
Archie, when we need you, I'll call you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
So you're home a little bit. Is there a Cody Albanese trying to get in?
Hang on. We have Cody on now. Did you get phone numbers?
What was that?
Did you get phone numbers too?
Yes.
Okay, all right, because I need for contact tracing, that's all.
Did Cody's on there?
Cody's on and Gregory
Okay.
Marshall. And Archie Rivera.
Cody.
Okay, you can start. Anytime you're ready.
And male,
Male? Yes.
intact,
No.
how old?
8, 7, I'm sorry.
And Jordan Abernathy is the owner.
Yeah. want this list or?
Yeah, I'll just make a copy of it.
All right, let me write it later for you.
That's all right, no, it's
Are you
fine.
sure?
As long as I can.
So these are the same numbers. Thank you.
All right. We're gonna get started. We'll call the hearing to order. The town of Tiverton is called this hearing because they have probable cause to believe a dog has behaved in a vicious, terrorizing manner. The incident they were talking about today involves a dog owned by Jordan Albernaz. That is alleged to have behaved in a vicious or terrorizing manner on 9/25 of this year. Mr. Albernaz, you're the owner of the dog in question?
Oh, yeah.
And Mrs. Kelly Oliveira? Okay, it was your dog that was the victim in this case? Okay. Okay. We're here under the Vicious Dog Law, Title 4, Chapter 13.1 of the Rhode Island General Laws, and today's hearing falls under the open meeting law. The panel is made up of 3 people: the chief of police from the city or town that it's called the hearing, or a person that he or she appoints, an agent from the Rhode Island SPCA, and 1 person that the city or town and the Rhode Island SPCA both agree upon. Now I'm going to read you portions of the vicious dog law. Under the law, a vicious dog is defined as any dog that, when unprovoked in a vicious and terrorizing manner, approaches any person in an apparent attitude of attack upon the street, sidewalks, or any public grounds or places. Any dog with no propensity, tendency, or disposition to attack unprovoked, to cause injury or to otherwise endanger the safety of human beings or domestic animals. Any dog that bites, inflicts injury, assaults, or otherwise attacks a human being or domestic animal without provocation on public or private property. We begin by hearing testimony from the victim or any witnesses on their behalf. When the victim and witnesses are done presenting evidence and testimony, the owner of the alleged vicious dog may speak, present any witnesses or evidence. The panel members may ask questions at any time during the hearing, and all answers to the questions will be directed to the panel. The only evidence that the panel will hear and consider is evidence that relates directly to the incident in question, or any evidence supported by previously documented police reports. Evidence that is admissible is something that you know happened, you saw happen, or you have direct knowledge of. Hearsay is not admissible. Hearsay can be described as what someone told you happened, or a written statement from someone who is not here today. Witnesses are not sworn but expected to tell the truth. After the testimony portion is closed, the panel will go into deliberation. Under the open meeting law, everyone is welcome to stay and observe. However, no more testimony will be allowed at that time. After we have finished deliberations, the matter will be put to a vote, with each panel member having one vote in the majority rules. The legal standard for making the decision to deem a dog vicious or not is based on civil standards and is known as preponderance of the evidence. What this means is that the evidence presented is sufficient to determine that the claim is more likely true than not. Mr. Alvarez, as the owner of the dog, should the dog be deemed vicious, you have 5 days to file an appeal in district court. And you're represented today? Okay, your name, ma'am?
Good morning, Danita Rossi.
What is it?
Danita Rossi.
Okay. If the dog is found vicious, the panel will vote on imposing any or all of the following requirements. Insurance of at least $100,000, tattooing and or microchipping of the dog, placement of warning signs on the owner's property, up to a 6-sided enclosure. The owner must notify the police if the dog is loose. If the dog is off of the owner's property, must be leashed and or muzzled. If the dog is outside on the owner's property, any combination of the following may be imposed: leash, muzzle, tie-out, or enclosed area. Dog must be spayed or neutered. If the owner moves, it must notify both cities and or towns of the move and cannot give away or sell the dog. The town can give you up to 30 days to meet these requirements. You will be provided with written notification detailing the requirements and exactly how long you have to meet them. If the requirements are not met in the time allowed, the animal may be euthanized. Are there any questions before we begin? All right, now, I understand there's a lot of people here, and we have, you know, a pretty good packet, including you know, a petition from the neighborhood. I want to make it clear that we're only allowed or interested in hearing testimony on specifically on this incident while we're here. I understand that, you know, everybody or most of you may have had incidents or observed issues with the dog. But in the interest of time, to not complicate this, we're going to stop where we, you know, have gotten enough information to make our decision. Okay. Okay, Mrs. Oliveira, can you tell us what happened on September 25th, please?
Yes, sir, thank you. My nephew. Sorry.
Yeah.
I asked my nephew to take Barry for a walk. He was the first one done with the school, and he took up his headset. Barry was wagging his tail in anticipation of the walk. We generally leave the front door, the principal door of the home open, so that there is the school door. So Barry was eagerly anticipating as soon as one of the children emerges that he would go out for his walk. my nephew took the leash and Barry was wagging his tail. They walked outside. They go, since they've been very young, our directive is that they leave our property, take a left, go to Thomas Street only. And that's something that's been in place since they were very small. Turn around and return back to the house. If I go to the mailbox and I can't see them, they know that they've got too far, so they never go past that way. He went with Barry. He walked towards the end of the property. I stood at the storm door, watched them walk away, came back in to make lunch. I was still in the house, turned around and went into the kitchen to make lunch. In short order, however long you can anticipate it would take to walk from my property to Thomas Street, which is approximately an eighth of a mile. Thank you. I want to be as precise as I can. Minutes, I would say approximately 3 minutes. Less than 5 for sure. I had my back, preparing the lunch, looking out the back door, and my nephew came running in and said, Auntie Kelly, a big dog attacked Barry and I. So truthfully, I thought the boys were going to tease me or something. So I said, oh, come on. And my back still turned, and I heard him collapse. My nephew face forward, he collapsed. And I jumped over, I instantly understood. I jumped over him and dashed out the front door and made my way to where they were, about 100 yards from my mailbox. At the neighboring house at this point. So they were down from Thomas Street and at the neighboring house. I ran to go towards the dog who was viciously mauling Barry. And I screamed, a scream that I had never heard come out of me before. And all of my neighbors came up instantly. Pardon me, I tried to go towards the dog who was viciously mauling him and making a lot of noise. Barry was crying and yelping. And as I approached, I was so afraid the way the dog went at me. I was ashamed to say that I did not engage the dog who was viciously mauling. But my neighbor ran so fast, I would say a matter of seconds, in response to the noise that came out of me that was a scream, very loud, and it continued. I was unable to stop the scream, and the dog kept mauling and mauling and mauling, and my pet was beginning to come apart. Sorry. And my neighbor, in that time, in those matter of seconds of the scream, he had some wooden object that I would describe as a 2x4 or a wooden piece, and a broomstick, of wood. And he was attempting to subdue the dog. At the exact same time, another neighbor jumped in. I mean, this was all happening in what I would describe a matter of 40 seconds, 30 seconds. Like there was still hope while Barry was beginning to be ravished. He was still crying and barking. And I was saying to him, I'm right here, Barry, Mommy's right here. And he was definitely still alive, although he was becoming dismembered at that time. My other neighbor came, everybody just came running. And I believe I was still screaming and screaming. And truly, as I've reflected upon conveying this, I hear myself in an unrecognizable tone. But all of these neighbors came she started to help. He was already joining in, helping Nora, who was going at the dog, who was mauling and mauling. But Barry was still like crying and weeping. At that point, Eliza was trying to help. At that point, I think I might have collapsed because I just remember Eliza picking me up. The children were running out of the house because it was just all very chaotic. My other child was still on, my son was still on the headset, and he said, Mommy, over the teacher and everybody talking, we could hear the noise. And so he said, I asked to go to the bathroom, and of course he came out to see the mauling, and at that point, I mean, they didn't stop. My neighborhood didn't stop. Another neighbor came out. She had bear spray, and she said, I've got bear spray. They're avid like campers, and so they had a significant tin of this bear spray, and she began to spray it. And unfortunately, my neighbors I was just downwind. They were, sorry, I'm not going to like north, south, east, and west, but I was towards my house. They were towards Thomas. We were in front of the house next door to me. And she sprayed, and everybody hoped and like held their breath for a moment. Like, this is it. Like we were kind of, it wasn't as organized as I'm describing it, but in trying to relay, there felt a moment of Norm never let up. He never let up. Mr. Barboza never let up. They were on him, but they reacted to the spray, and it was like a brown mist. And you could see, however the wind was blowing, it didn't impact us downwind, but they got it, the adults who were helping, and they reacted as if they were being hit with bear spray. The dog never stopped. The dog continued and continued and continued. When the police finally arrived, there were multiple calls to the police. I can remember, I'm sorry to say that I was not one of those calls because I was not prepared for such an emergency. So I am very shamed by that. But there were numerous people who made those calls. And when the first officer arrived, he tried to use his taser. The taser was ineffective on the first time. They continued. At that point, I began to realize that Barry had been quiet for a moment, what seemed like a moment, but it may have been longer, truthfully. And I was still hoping at that point. My neighbor was trying to help me understand that this was moving away from us, and she was trying to get me and the children away from what was becoming even more of a gruesome mauling than what I'm hopefully conveying to you. He recharged the taser. He tased the dog the second time. Again, there was this moment of maybe this is it. The bear spray went off again. A second time, the brown mist came. Nothing. The dog never stopped. And at this point, Barry was beginning to become lifeless. And it was apparent to me that we were beyond repair, but I was still hoping because there was a weird noise coming from him that I'm not sure was the violent breaking of his body or if he was still perhaps alive. But my neighbor kept encouraging me that it was not going to happen, like we weren't going to save him, but they never let up. What I would say would be the third time that he was tased, the officer tased the dog in between the nose and the eye. The reason why I know that is because the officer told me that directly. I saw another tase, but I could not see that particular action at that time. Again, in honesty, I may have collapsed again at that point. I just know that Eliza, my neighbor, kept trying desperately to like restore me to my sort of feet and sort of sanity, because it felt like a very crazy time. I would describe it as unbelievable. All of them kept fighting. When the third taser went off that time, they were able to do something, but at that point, somebody was holding me again because we were trying to save the kids. don't forget the kids.
How far, so where the incident was taking place when you got to the dogs, it was how far from your driveway?
Maybe 50 yards, so if Thomas is 100 yards, this was 50 yards, and I mean, I was jacked with all of the adrenaline of seeing my nephew collapse.
Sure.
I was like, like, but we had no idea. So all of our neighbors have multiple small dogs. So I would say, so there's Abby and Mitzi and Barry, and I would consider Linus is not smaller, but not quite like a Shih Tzu or the other dogs. The other dogs that I'm describing to you that live directly across the street are all in the same size.
Okay.
So if I had known that there was a pit bull, we've got almost 2 acres in the back, I would have had the kids take the dogs to the back. But this is a common thing in our neighborhood.
Sure.
Common that we're all outside, common that the children are unattended, common that there are children in walkers, and literally we're a dead end street. And many of us have been connected to the neighborhood for 50 years in my own family. So, in the neighbors as well for 45 years and 50 years respectively. So it's that neighborhood where we just don't.
So where the incident occurred, how far from there to Mr. Albanez's property?
So they live on another street around the corner, which is why we had never seen the dog, or anyone had ever seen the dog on Fury, because Thomas intersects. And so
it's several houses away.
I would say more than several, but yeah, several would be inaccurate.
So you have not or had not seen this dog or had any interaction from this?
Never. We were shocked when people were coming to us to say, this is the dog that would talk my dog. You have to understand the intersection. So we're on the dead end part. If you look at Fury Avenue, it would be intersected by Thomas. We're on the end closest to the dead end. So people who live closest to Brayton, from Thomas towards Brayton, had the encounter with the dog, but had never said anything to those of us who lived at the intersection closest to the dead end. The other folks who have dogs in the area, who have bigger dogs on our end of the street, we know them all. So nobody, I mean, they were like, there's a pit bull here. I mean, we were all like, there's a pit bull here. And so that's why I think I initially thought it was a joke from the boys trying to like get me scared that Precious Barry was like they knew that. So nobody had ever thought about it. We never have had the children out if I thought that there was a pit bull broken through an electric fence twice before an attack. We have plenty of space in the backyard. It would never have happened.
Okay.
Thank you. There's no previous instance.
No, according
Questions? Great question. Mrs. Rossi, do you have questions for Mrs. Oliver?
No, no.
Okay. We'll ask questions of any witnesses if we feel it's necessary, okay, to clarify anything, or I think we have, the gist of the story from Mrs. Oliveira, okay? Would you guys agree there?
her nephew's on Zoom if you need to ask him.
He is on Zoom, okay, okay. All right, Mr. Albanez, did you witness the incident at all, or were you home at the time of the incident?
I was not.
Okay. Do you know how did Buddha get out of the yard? Is he normally left outside or secured outside somehow, or?
So we have an electric fence. We had that installed years ago. Also another dog that lives in our house is my father's dog, Roxy.
Okay.
So it would just seem to be the best thing. We live on 2 acres of land, and it's woods. And we don't like to leave dogs tied up in the city, so we invested in electric fence years ago.
And there's been no previous incidents, right? Okay, that you're aware. So the electric fence has been effective until this.
Yeah, the guy in the hall, yeah.
Okay. You agree that it was a ways away that the incident, are you familiar with where the incident occurred?
I have not been given information regarding
Okay. Um,
What happened that day that would have caused the dog to react like that? And
that. I don't know how he reacted to it.
well,
okay.
well, even to about the. You wanna,
I'm sorry, what's your name, sir?
Michael Alvin.
Okay.
The best we can figure out, we have videos that, because we have to install cameras as well. The children up the street, they like to advise use the dogs and stuff. So we decided to post and put cameras. We
Okay.
have, we've been around,
Can you just speak up, sir, or just pull your mask down while you?
we have video.
Okay.
He's up at the top where we usually park, sniffing around. And then I'm always looking for him and he wasn't around. So I called for my son at the same time. The dog officer, police officer came, knocked on the door and asked me if this belonged to my dog. So,
Meaning the caller?
the collar, the broken collar.
Yep.
They found us because it went off when they came up the driveway.
Yep.
When it hit the wire. I don't know a little amount of that. I don't. I can't. That dog I can't drive across it. So I'm at a loss if he saw that dog come down the street or he saw something. I don't know. I really don't know. And you know what? It wasn't on his own because they're Arlo cameras, so they work off
Yeah.
the motion, so it didn't catch him. If he went blowing through that fence, it didn't catch him on film. So I don't know. Beyond, I don't know. And if I could retract that, I would.
Oh, I
But
understand.
I don't know what drove him out.
And no previous incidents with the dog, no, gets along okay with your,
He likes
with
going
your other
around,
dog?
sniffing around, peeing on everything. Bring a dog. I mean, he sleeps on my chest. My grandchildren come up to the house. He's been around kids looking at faces that can't buy in the back. He plays with, I got another rescue dog. They're both rescued. So they're mixed. They're not killed.
Yeah. Where did, you get Buddha?
He got them from, Forever Paws.
What is it?
Forever Paws in Florida.
Okay.
So when he, I was a property manager at a fraternity house years ago, and we thought it would be a great addition, so I adopted him. I had to wait until he was 2 months because he was neutered.
Yep.
We had to wait for him to get neutered. And he was like, he lived in the house with 40 plus residents. People from rival fraternities would come and visit him, and they called him my bud. Like, he was never,
So no aggression towards people?
no, never. And when I left that job, I brought him, my parents.
Well, he got hit by a car.
Yeah, that's, he got hit by a car, which is the first reason why we brought him to Tiverton. He was like 2 years old. And we brought him to Tiverton, and then it kind of just stayed there. So from like 2 months to about 2, he was at the fraternity house for maybe 1.5 or so. And then we brought him, and he stayed at our house. And
How long has the dog been?
at least 5 years, probably closer to 6, he's at 8 now.
And there was no indication from anybody else that the dog was aggressive towards people, just
So
towards,
didn't know that.
and once they were separated, no aggression towards
No.
anybody. Great question.
Day of the incident, was the electric fence collar working?
It must work because that's how we found the.
So it was activated as the dog got off the property?
Yeah.
How was the collar broken?
I think it was broken off when we were trying to get them apart.
They broke the class.
Yeah,
The
the-
class.
The class, the class.
And how's your dog with other dogs? Has he interacted with other dogs before?
My friend Brittany has a little dog they play together. My other friend has had a York dog, teacup Yorkie, plays with that. Lives with Roxy, who's like a bulldog. I mean, we don't know what they are. We don't know if they're pit bulls or bulldogs. We rescue them, and so we haven't had a DNA test being continued on. He probably has a little mix of it, but I adopted him because they get a bad rep. And,
So people brought dogs onto your property and your dog has been fine
and I
with that?
brought my dog onto other dog's property. Yeah. And he always, well, Uncle Tony, Charlie, Son Chow, yeah.
So it's had multiple interactions with other dogs without
Not
previous.
as many as people until we lived with my dad's dog Roxy.
Say that again?
Not necessarily, so yeah, interactions, and then when we moved them to Tiverton, my dad got a dog, and then ever since then, every day I've had interactions with that dog. Or, how old is Roxy? I can't remember.
They've been together for a while.
Yeah.
You know, it's all this nice thing to do, but I have to look at the paper on that. So, yeah.
Roxy, do you have anything to add?
Not at this time.
Okay. If the dog was up to date, license, or
Did you end up getting it licensed? Were you
I
able
mailed
to?
it in, they might have it, yeah.
so up to date at the time of the incident, up to date.
Yeah, yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah.
I would like to address two issues. One, you should be in receipt of 2 letters from neighbors who live at the intersection from Bacon to Thomas, where the dog has gotten out and attacked their dog. And one of them indicated in the letter that is why they had put the.
Is that
fence
person
in,
here today?
And get got him. The letters are in your packet.
Yeah, is that person?
No, they had to work.
Okay.
And additionally, to those 2 incidents, which this would have been the third, the other matter that I wanted to address, I'm sorry. So I wanted to address the fact that the dog had gotten out twice and the neighbor did put it in writing. Oh, the license, thank you. We met with the chief prior to this to understand how a fraternity dog whose owner did not live on the property was allowed to reside there when there had been 2 incidences. And in that meeting.
Just let me ask you a question before you go. Were either of those incidents reported to animal control? No. Okay.
The abuse of the animal was reported and that was documented.
It was documented as unfounded though by police. Like, we have that report and police report that, on their arrival that,
Should be in.
yeah, on their arrival at that complaint, they found no evidence that had happened.
So the only reason why I know about that was initially, it was also a meeting with the chief because a neighbor came over and said, this was the dog that we saw the owners punching and beating. And we wanted to let you know, to ask the chief to look into this if there was a call, because we called it. And these are people who live on the side street that we don't typically interface, but they felt so moved to let us know that they themselves had saw the dog being beaten. And upon arrival, that the police were not actively seeing the dog be beaten, but these are, well-established families and folks that we don't know who brought that information to us, first of all. And second
And
of all,
I don't doubt that, what they were concerned with what they saw.
And the second piece I wanted to say, I was appalled and aghast. I said to the chief, can you explain to me how a fraternity dog of an owner, that we had to wait an hour and change for him to drive from Narragansett area, and I may be wrong about specific town, but we were all waiting on the corner, many of us, in hopes of having a moment to save him what we could see, because we were concerned for the children in the next attack.
And the chief had said that he asked Officer Jen if the dog had been registered. And she said, no, they weren't aware that they had to register their dog. And I said, Chief, if I may, as somebody who's lived in this town, among many people who have lived in this town forever, how an owner of a dog would leave a dog at a property that he does not reside, not register that dog with the town, not have proper licensing, that two other people have called about that dog. So on the day the police went to investigate this abuse of this poor animal, which it's heart-wrenching for me. We are a dog family, to think of a dog being in that situation, that nobody in the town said, what is this dog registered? That there's no licensing for him. Can you help me to understand that? And the chief turned to Jen and she said, they promised they'll get it done, but no. So I want you to understand and in truthfulness, all of the facts, and the facts are that that dog is not licensed and registered at the time of the incident at all, and that the owner does not reside with him. And that in fact, we have a third event on our street, and we are fearful for the children and the rest of the animals.
So, of course, and we ask these questions because it establishes a pattern of responsibility. My opinion, my feeling is that a lot of dogs aren't registered or licensed as required. And I don't necessarily believe that establishes how an owner is necessarily.
I understand, sir. Just wanted you to have the
Yeah,
truth.
no, I understand.
Your question.
As far as the previous complaint, again, it was unfounded by police. There's, a difference between maybe punishing a dog and the way people view it. I mean, we deal with animal cruelty complaints all day long. That's all we do. And the vast majority of the complaints that we get are just that, unfounded. People, observe something that they believe may be cruelty, and when it's, investigated, it's found not to be. So I have no doubt that the neighbor saw something. I put faith in the police and that, they responded there and found no evidence of that. So in the law, the terms owner and guardian are synonymous. So if Mr. Albanese is watching his son's dog, he is the de facto owner of the dog. So the dog can reside there. He's, legally responsible for that animal as the owner, just, the same legal requirements as the owner. I understand there's a concern because it's a pit bull. And I understand, trust me, I understand the stigma that's associated with pit bulls. Just let me finish.
I wasn't able to witness the attack.
Just let me finish. I own 2 pit bulls that are have never shown aggression to any other animal. But my opinion is, and what's required by statute is that owners take responsibility for their animals and secure them. So my opinion is that it's irrelevant. The breed is irrelevant. And again, the vast majority of these cases that we deal with are not associated with pit bulls. So I want to make that clear. And then, one final thing is we have this letter, and I understand the concern of the neighborhood. The letter is to have the dog removed or euthanized. Again, we're limited statutorily what we can impose upon an owner if a dog is deemed vicious. The only time that we can order a dog euthanized by statute is if the dog has previously been deemed vicious and, has a second incident where either a person or a domestic animal is injured, and the only exception to that is on a first incident, if a human is killed by the dog, then we can order a euthanasia. So we cannot force somebody to give up their property. That's for a host of reasons, but especially for the fact that it's his property and we just can't deprive people of their property without due process. So, but again, we understand that there's a need to secure your animal. You have to do that by law, and you have a moral and legal responsibility to do that. And we understand the concerns of the neighbors. So, our goal is to ensure that, if the dog is being vicious, based on what we hear, that we take steps to make sure that a second incident doesn't occur. I've done hundreds of these hearings, and anytime that we've deemed the dog vicious, and we've put in place the requirements that we're allowed to put in place, they work, and they prevent, in out of hundreds of cases, one time, I've had a second incident involving a dog that was being vicious. So I want you to be able to put faith in the fact that these requirements work, should the dog be deemed vicious. Did you have something to add, sir?
I wasn't there to witness the attack. I didn't make it home in time.
Sure.
When I got there, Jen had the dog in the car already. It was my idea to use the electric collar to find the home because I didn't know whose dog it was.
Sure.
Upon the initial meeting of Mr. Alvarez, Officer Cummins and Jen got him from the house. He come down, motioned to me, apologized for the dog being killed. They had asked him if the dog was aggressive, and he said not toward humans, but other dogs. So he did know that the dog was aggressive towards other animals.
Do you recall that? You don't. Okay. All right, does anybody have anything to add that we haven't heard yet? I know that there were several incidents or alleged incidents involving this dog. If it wasn't reported to police, we're prohibited from hearing about that. That's, and involving this incident, anything that we haven't heard. Ma'am, can you just give us your name, please?
My name is Nancy Dupont, and I live on Peary Avenue. I wasn't there at the incident either, but I feel like I have some insight as to what this dog is like because I walk every day, and I have a 7-pound dog myself that I walk with every day. And if their dogs are out when I walk by, this particular dog, and I didn't know it was a pit bull, and to me, that doesn't matter what kind of a dog it is. He charges to the end of the driveway where the fence is, and I can tell you, this dog is foaming at the mouth if I have my dog with me. And this is every time he's outside. If I'm walking by myself, which I do at times, he does come down to the edge where he can reach without going through the fence. And he is barking at me, but not in the same way as if I have my dog. So I just felt that was important for everybody to know because.
So in your experience with the dog, you've never seen him leave the yard?
He did not. He's never left the yard that I've seen, no. And that day, probably 2 minutes before the attack, I did walk by and I did have my dog. And I didn't see him in the driveway. But he is very aggressive when you are there with a dog. I just felt that was important for everybody to know.
Okay. Sir?
Yeah, I was the one that was probably the first one on the scene. The dog didn't even faze me, didn't even look at me as I was trying to help the other dog. The 2 sticks, nothing. Anything I could do, try to help that dog. The dog did not stop. Didn't even blink. Yikes. Didn't let go, would not stop.
And yeah, I mean, the way the incident played out seems to be well documented in the police report. And it certainly appears that the neighborhood did everything they could to stop the attack, and it was not successful. Now,
The dog was like wolf on prey. He was in a trance. He had a glaze in his eyes. Norman and I, when he was hitting with a stick, I was yelling at it. It was beautiful. The dog, if he could have ate it, he would have ate that. That's what it was like.
Yeah.
This is my son, and I came out right after him when I saw him run up in our
heard Kelly screaming. Kelly lives right straight across the street. I saw my son, and then he had a broom, he was trying to separate it. The broom broke. I ran back to my porch, and I have a walking stick, a good 3-inch diameter walking stick. I grabbed that, ran back, gave it to him. It broke once, then it broke a second time. The dog did not stop. And for everyone, and this is when I told Kelly with the children, I said, get the kids in the house, don't let them out. And at that point, when I knew, and we all knew, that the dog was gone, I said, leave it, because there's nothing more we can do and wait for the police. Because the mace didn't work, even when Officer Thrilla, he arrived with his gun, it didn't work. Nothing stopped that dog until it was finished. Then it stopped. Jen reached out to the dog, it wagged its tail like nothing happened. But the visual of what we saw and that little dog screaming, and I truly believe this is not, if we could turn back the clock, we would all be very, very happy. And especially with the dog owner, because we're dog people. And honestly, we really don't want to see the dog euthanized. But the fear in the neighborhood is very real. Because we were there, we saw it, we heard it. And that's our main concern. A neighbor right across the corner on Thomas Street, she's got 4 little kids. One is an infant in her arms. And her kids were looking outside. And she put her car there to block it so the kids couldn't see. Because nothing anyone physically could do was going to stop what that dog was focused on doing. And at that point, it was like the drag off or whatever. So this is our huge, true concern. Please make sure whatever the law is, and we understand as hard as it is, try to understand, to follow this law because of our fear and the visual that this is, whatever is mandated is enforced and watched, because I'm sure none of us, these people here as well, want to ever hear or see of anything like that happen again. We get that.
I'm sure, they're, upset about what happened as well.
We understand that. We understand, but it's a security.
Think about the neighborhood. That's what it is.
And I do, and our, primary responsibility, like I said, is to, balance the need for public safety against what's main treatment of the animal.
Right.
And, we'll do that. But like I said, we cannot, order the dog euthanized or order the owner to give up the dog. We're not allowed to do that by statute. Mrs. Rossi?
I would just like to point out one small concern. When Ms. DuPont was testifying, she said that the dog goes to the edge of the driveway and it acts aggressively. The invisible fence is actually halfway up the driveway, so it can't make it to the bottom.
That's what I meant. That he would come down as far as where the fence would allow him to.
Sir?
If she's fearful, which I understand the whole neighborhood's fearful of the dog. There was a big Facebook law, and basically they were saying the neighborhood was saying that they were afraid to come down the street. Well, I got multiple videos of people coming down the street since the attack. Every day, twice a day.
And
Going
have
around,
to
right up by the driveway and gone, because I moved my cameras around, because I wasn't picking up people or dogs. Adjusted that, and I just wanted to let you know that they still come, and they still walk. I had a gentleman and an older lady that come down with their dog almost every day. They used to come down until this happened. With their dog, with no leash, he carried a cane, they come down, they wave to us, talk to us. That dog never bothered that dog, never drew or foamed at the mouth. Okay? A dog will bark, it's his yard, and he's going to bark, and that's what they do. You guys know that better than me. So,
You're speaking of Jack and Linda Van Hoff who walked their dog down the street, and they were under the impression that the dog was removed and did not know he was still on the property.
Truly, I spoke with the
That's why I
neighbor
walked down the street.
directly across from us.
Right.
And
I got all the video.
we, certainly not contesting that. Well, this is our home. We've lived here for many years. Of course we walk the neighborhood. They did not
I
know.
wasn't talking about you guys.
He was talking about Jack and Linda Van Hoff, and they weren't aware the dog was still on the property. They thought he was removed.
We followed
In
every.
person, if I may,
Yeah.
I think the rest of that is futile. I would like you to know that when I was asked about my statement, and asked to think about it from the chief, because we didn't do any initial, it was too on the scene, too fresh, and to everyone was sort of very hysterical, obviously. When I thought, I said, my parents had come in, I said, well, I guess the time frame, and I was trying to be as accurate as possible. And I was like, well, it felt this long, and I was really in a calm place, trying to be as accurate and as concise as I could, understanding how important the facts would be. And I said, I think it was about 15 minutes, and a neighbor who witnessed said, Kelly, it was 22 minutes. So for all of that duration, the most vicious attack, a mauling of the dog, not 5 minutes, not 6 minutes, not 15 in my quietest moments, trying to quell all of the emotion and be direct, but approximately 22 minutes. I hope that you understand an animal, and I know that we're all animal people, that would have that intent and focus and directive for that long of a mauling, with all of the attack happening to it, air spray, tasing, and constant two grown men trying to stop it and breaking broomsticks, wooden boards, never flinched. And I implore you to consider how vicious a duration and a focus of an attack that it truly is.
So I believe that the whole situation with that yelling and hitting the dog might have made it 10 times worse too. Because I believe the dog, sometimes you just look at him the wrong way and he'll shake. So I believe that whole situation didn't make it any better. And caused it to be a little bit worse for all parties,
Sure, and that may have been the case, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect them to have done nothing.
Oh, no, no.
I mean, I think the same, I would certainly respond the same way if it was my dogs that were attacked. Honestly, when we hear these, we're looking at a couple of things. Did the incident occur on the dog's property? Which it did not. And was the dog provoked? Which, again, it doesn't appear that happened. So those are, primary concerns when trying to determine whether a dog, meets the requirement, legally to be deemed vicious.
With due respect, though, we don't know what happened to start this attack. There's not one person here that can testify that they saw what happened.
I know you're part of the children who are supposed to be attending school right now, have been waiting patiently.
So
the traumatized children to do that, yes. And they announced that at the beginning.
And I don't know that I agree. I think it would be very difficult to argue that there was a provoked attack.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying with due respect, none of us know what happened.
No, but I mean, again, those are our two primarily, those are, the two considerations that would, primarily would make this not a vicious dog. Was it provoked? And there's no evidence that it was. And certainly, it occurred a distance from the owner's property. Where it would be difficult to argue that the dog was provoked, especially considering the legal requirements to secure your dog. So if the dog had been secured properly in the yard, it wouldn't have had the ability to exit the yard to be provoked, if that's the argument. And there was no infringement on the dogs, Mr. Albany's dog's property. So, you know, it wasn't protecting its property or its territory or its owner or guardian from some sort of attack or assault. Those are, I mean, I think important things to consider. Ryan,
No, I agree.
great.
Just curious, that, you know, with all that happened and all the attempts to try and get the dog to let go, did your dog suffer any like post injuries? Like, did he, you know, he was hitting it with a stick, did it, you know, break a rib or something?
I had to give him aspirin for a couple of days.
What's that?
I had to give him aspirin for a couple of days. He was down, he was there, he had some damage. He's got a couple of contusions that's still there. If they don't go away, I'm gonna have to work out.
So he has not been to a vet?
Not yet, no. Me and my youngest son almost died in the bathroom trying to wash him. But I can tell you that.
What do you mean?
But I think it's more red, brown, the sprays that they put on.
Oh, yeah.
It was unbelievable. We tried to clean him up before we got him back in the house, but he had to get back in the house and try to do all that stuff.
Sure.
So my house stunk for days. Like touching peppers, anytime you touch something.
Yeah.
touch-
I'm familiar. Okay.
If I may, sorry, one last piece. In the meeting that my family attended with the chief, we asked and asked to be on the record that we were very concerned about the dog. And we asked, like, is anybody caring for that dog? Is it okay? Can you please do a wellness check? And the chief said that it's reasonable. And I said also because the neighbor, who they mind their business, older, had come over to talk about the beating. It's appalling that we were there. This is 2 days after. I don't think that my family and I will ever be the same, but we had concern and asked the chief to make sure the dog had been looked at, but this dog still hasn't been looked at after all of that. I would like you to check that record because we asked the chief to please do that and go on the record.
Sure. I mean, I think that's reasonable, but if the, you know, you believe that the animal has an injury, it probably should be seen by a vet.
What I'm trying to explain is, no one told us anything about what they did other than try to make.
Yeah, no, I understand. In fairness, I understand that.
Sticks and a 3-inch, a 2.5-inch walking stick, and it broke over twice. No one gave us that information.
No, I understand.
So to say that we're negligent or not, of not having it checked, I'm sorry,
We were asked not to speak.
disagree. No one told us anything.
We were asked not to speak to you.
Okay.
Excuse me, nobody called you negligent. This is about the concern of the animal.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonable that, you know, if you believe that the dog is injured, probably certainly a good idea to have it seen by a vet.
And if I may, I'm sorry. My neighbors and I are asked them to come with me because we were all grieving and mourning. And when I referred earlier that we were standing on Fury and Thomas, waiting for an hour and what I think I said was like an hour and change. To be specific, I was referring to saying like over an hour, waiting for the gentleman to arrive from what I believe is the Narragansett area, who was the owner. We were, us, which I have to say, grieving also, we asked if we could approach them. I said, we've been waiting here when we saw the gentleman tear down the street. We're like, this must be him. And I said, I would like to speak with him because I'm sure he has no idea of what this looked like. We'd like him to know. And I was told with these two women, who I assure you we are not any sort of a gang, that I would be arrested immediately and that so then I said, may I ask why you're saying that I would be arrested? I'm the neighbor I'm the mother of Barry. We want them to understand because of the children. And at that time we were standing with the family with the children on their hips, the smaller ones who are often in the, yard. And they said, we are telling them
that they said they don't want to have anything to do with you and that we're going to have to arrest you if you don't leave Thomas Street. And I was like, but I think we should speak animal person to animal person. So we did try to tell them what the dog had gone through because the tasing was horrific. When my neighbor and I went to speak to the chief, he said, when we asked for the woman's check on him, we said, we're not talking about euthanizing the animal. That's not what we're discussing. We're talking about the safety of this neighborhood, and this is the third fence. So I would like you to have that information as well.
All right. Ms. Rossi, anything to add?
No, I would just reiterate that, I understand that we're talking around these three offenses, but you've made clear that the other ones were.
I mean, our only consideration today is this specific incident.
Thank you.
That's clear in the, the statute that tells us how to manage.
Thank you.
Sure.
If you would like documentation of when I first purchased the electric fence back, it was after he got hit by the car, because I wanted to protect him from entering the street. So it
Sure, no,
wasn't
I
for
understand.
any other reason.
I understand, and I don't think we did that. I mean, I don't doubt that there's an electric fence.
So that's what he said, this is.
All right. All right, let us just discuss this for a minute and we'll have a decision, okay?
Great, thank you.
Clearly, we can't help it, it's just the incident occurred unprovoked, at a distance from the owner's property. I think. So I think based on the statute, it meets the requirement to be used. Yes, yeah, I'm definitely. I'm sorry. I would say. Clearly, the electric.
Yeah.
Okay, I have your sheet.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Sir, based on what we've heard, we've determined that the dog meets the requirement to be deemed vicious. So with that being said, we've come up with the following requirements. That the owner obtain vicious dog insurance covering the dog for at least $100,000. For all of these things, there's specific requirements in the statute. So with the insurance, it has to be maintained. The town has to be named on the policy in the event that it's canceled. That the dog be tattooed or microchipped. If he already is, you can just present animal control with evidence of that. Owner must place warning signs on his or her property, which are visible. They have to say, vicious dog, and have to be visible from the street. Must notify the police if the dog is loose. If the dog is off of your property, must be leashed and muzzled. If the dog is outside on your property, so the only time that he can be outside on your property is on a leash or in an enclosure. So there, again, specific requirements in the statute regarding fencing. Has to be a minimum of 6 feet high that prevents escape from the area or entry of people into the yard. So it has to be essentially a locking 6 foot high fence. Must be spayed, must be neutered. And again, if that's already done, just providing animal control with evidence of that. Where is Thomas Street the address where the dog lives? Okay. So if you move or take the dog from, these requirements follow the dog for its life. So if you take the dog from that address and bring them to wherever you live, they still follow the dog. But you have to notify Tiverton that the dog is leaving Tiverton, and whatever town you're bringing him to, that you're coming into the town with a dog that's been deemed vicious. And again, these requirements still apply wherever you bring him. And you cannot give away or sell the dog. I'm sure your attorney can give you information on this, but any violations, the dog gets out, you cancel insurance, etc. The first violation is a fine of $550, and then second and subsequent violations are fines of $1,000. Should there be a second incident, the dog now being deemed vicious can be euthanized. Okay. Are there any questions? Any questions, ma'am?
If you're opposed.
Well,
Okay, this hearing's closed, so I'm taking it off of the Zoom. Thank you.